But still he was full of rude questions. He asked questions about everything that he saw or heard or felt or smelt or touched. And all his uncles and his aunts spanked him. They weren't very good, were they? One fine morning, the elephant's child asked a new fine question that he'd never asked before, and he'd often wondered about it. He asked, "What does a crocodile have for its dinner?" Did you know what a crocodile has for its dinner? Well, might do. Everybody said, "Hush!" And they spanked him immediately without stopping for a long time for asking such a silly question. Well, when that was finished, he went out into the garden and he came upon a bird sitting in the middle of a wait-a-bit thorn bush. And he said, "My dad has spanked me and my mother has spanked me and all my uncles and aunts have spanked me, but I still want to know what the crocodile has for its dinner." Then the bird said with a mournful cry, "Go down to the banks of the great grey, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and you will find out what the crocodile has for dinner." That very next morning, when there was nothing left to do, the elephant's child took 100 pounds of bananas, the little short red kind, and 100 pounds of sugar cane, the long purple kind, and 17 melons, the green crackly kind, and said to all his family, "Goodbye, I'm going down to the great grey, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to find out..." What was he going to find out?
What do crocodiles have for their dinner?
That's exactly what it says. Find out what the crocodile has for dinner. So they all spanked him once more for luck, although he asked them most politely if they wouldn't mind stopping. Smacked. Spanked is smacked. They all smacked him for being cheeky, asking rude questions, you see. "Don't you dare ask me why I've got a spotty face."
Because they smacked their bums.
That's right. Then he went away, a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about because he hadn't got any space to pick it up. It was so full of other things he was carrying. He went east by north, eating melons all the time, until at last he came to the banks of the great grey, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, just as the bird had said.
Isn't that one or that one?
And that's this one. "Now you must know and understand that till that very week and day and hour and minute, this elephant's child had never seen a crocodile. He didn't even know what it looked like, and yet he did want to know. And the first thing that he found by the river was a coloured python rock snake, curled round a rock. Ooh, great big snake, all round a rock.
Was it like one of them African snakes that have?
Yeah, absolutely, great big fat
And
snake. And you might find some snakes in the zoo at Wingham.
Wow!
You might do. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely to the snake. "Have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these parts?" "Have I seen a crocodile?" said the python snake in a voice of scorn. "What will you be asking me next?" "Well," said the elephant's child, "could you kindly tell me what he has for his dinner?" Then the python rock snake uncoiled himself very quickly from the rock and smacked the elephant's child with his scalesome, flailsome tail. Ooh, imagine that. Yeah, with his big tail he smacked him on the bum. So he said goodbye very politely to the rock snake and helped him to coil up on the rock again.
Was he being rude?
Was he being rude? He was asking rude questions, you see. He shouldn't have asked him that, should he?
What, all day?
All day long, yeah.
Oh.
And he went on, a little warm, but not at all astonished, still eating melons and still throwing the rind on the ground because he couldn't pick it up, till he trod on what he thought was a log of wood, great big log of wood at the edge of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees. Imagine the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River in Africa, all set about with fever trees. But what he'd trodden on wasn't a piece of wood at all. You know what it was? It was really the crocodile. Because crocodiles look like great big old logs.
Yeah.
They do, don't they?
It's just that they're very long.
Yeah, and he thought this was a big log of wood, and he trod on it.
Oh.
And the crocodile was snoozing, and it felt him tread on its back, and it opened an eye. It looked around and it winked like this. It thought, aha, something funny is happening here. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child when he saw the winking eye. "Do you happen to have seen a crocodile in these parts?" And then the crocodile winked his other eye, lifted half his tail out of the mud, and the elephant's child stepped back very politely because he didn't wish to be smacked again. "Come here, little one," said the crocodile. "Why do you ask these questions all the time?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but my father smacked me, my mother smacked me, not to mention my tall aunt, the ostrich, and my tall uncle, the giraffe, who can kick up, as well as my broad aunt, the hippopotamus, and my hairy uncle, the baboon, and the rock snake, with his scalesome, flailsome tail. He smacked harder than any of them, and so, if it's quite all the same to you, Mr. Crocodile, I don't want to be smacked any more." "Come here, little one," said the crocodile, "for I am the crocodile." And he wept crocodile tears to show it was quite true. Then the elephant's child grew all breathless and panted and knelt down on the bank, and he said, "You are the very person I've been looking for all these long days. Will you please tell me what you have for dinner?" "Ho, ho, come here, little one," said the crocodile, "and I'll whisper it to you. Ho, ho, ho." Then the elephant's child put his head down close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth, and the crocodile immediately caught him by his little nose, which up to that very weekday hour a minute had been no bigger than a boot, though much more useful.
What, the elephant?
"Well, we're going to see in a minute, aren't we?" "I think," said the crocodile, and he said it between his teeth, because his mouth was shut, holding on to the elephant child's funny nose, "I think today I'm going to start my dinner with an elephant's child." Ooh. At this, the elephant's child was much annoyed, and he said, speaking through his nose, "Let go, you're hurting me." Then the rock snake scuffled down from the bank and said, "My friend, if you do not now immediately pull as hard as you can, it's my opinion that your acquaintance in that large leather jacket will jerk you into yonder limpid stream before you can say Jack Robinson, and you will be his dinner." Ooh.
Let's see if his mouth's open.
Well, so the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches, and he pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled as hard as he possibly could. And of course, because the crocodile was holding on to the end of his nose, it began to stretch, longer and longer and longer. And the crocodile floundered into the water, making it all creamy with great sweeps of his tail, and he pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled, and so there was an enormous tug-of-war with the crocodile pulling him into the water, and the elephant's child pulling back, and his poor little nose going longer and longer and longer. And the elephant child's nose kept on stretching, and he spread all his little forelegs, and he pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled, and then the elephant child felt his legs slipping, and he said through his nose, which was now nearly 5 feet long, longer than that table, "This is too much for me." No, he didn't say, "This is too much for me." Then the rock snake came down from the bank and knotted himself in a double knot round the elephant child's legs and said, "Rash and inexperienced traveller, we will now devote ourselves to pulling you into the water." So he pulled, and the elephant's child pulled, and the crocodile pulled. But the elephant's child and the snake pulled the hardest, and at long last the crocodile let go of the elephant's child's nose with a plop that you could hear all up and down the great grey, green, greasy Limpopo River. Then the elephant's child sat down hard and sudden, but first he was very careful, because he was a polite little child, to say "thank you" to the rock snake, and next he was kind to his poor pulled nose, and he wrapped his nose up in cool banana leaves and hung it in the great grey green greasy Limpopo to cool off. Well, that's a bit daft, do you think? The crocodile would come and eat him. "What are you doing that for?" said the python. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "my nose is badly out of shape and I'm wanting it to shrink back." "Then you'll have to wait a long time," said the snake. "Some people don't know what's good for them." The elephant's child sat there for 3 days waiting for his nose to shrink, but it never grew any